Greetings, everyone. I'm Gerald Kotianko, the Career Development Officer at the Climate School. I'm delighted that you're all interested in today's topic, which, broadly speaking, is about understanding, tracking, and communicating progress towards sustainable development goals. More specifically, how you as students can collaborate with a team from SDGs Today to come up with non-traditional sources of data or innovative uses of data to help us reach our global goals. The team is focused on promoting and supporting the use of GIS, which stands for Geographic Information System, a way to gather, analyze, and visualize geographic data. And tomorrow, in fact, is GIS Day, a day dedicated to promoting this framework. So turning our attention now to our guests, with us, we have the head of SDGs Today, Maryam Rabiee, and GIS Analyst Anela Layugan. They're going to talk about how students can use their platform and collaborate with the team. We also have guests from the Center for International Earth Science Information Network, which is also called CIESIN. We have Linda Pistolesi, Senior GIS Specialist, and James Gibson, Research Staff Assistant. They're going to talk about some of the data sets that came out of their collaboration with SDGs Today. And lastly, we're going to have some Q&A at the end, so you're welcome to use the raise hand feature or add your question in the chat. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Maryam.
Thanks so much, Gerald, for the introduction and for hosting this event. We're really excited to celebrate GIS Day and Week with the Climate School and with all the participants. So, okay, let's see, great. I'll start with a brief introduction on SDSN and who we are, and then we'll jump into more details about the program and the focus of today's event. The Sustainable Development Solutions Network was launched under the auspices of the UN Secretary General in 2012. Our mission is to promote integrated approaches to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement through research, policy analysis, global collaboration, and education. And so we have a global network of knowledge institutions all around the world. I think we've reached about 1,700 institutions. About 75 to 80% of them are academic and universities, and the rest are NGOs and CSOs. And so we work closely with them in terms of implementing the SDGs and various solutions at local, national, and regional levels. In addition to our global network, we have thematic programs across our 3 offices in New York, Paris, and Kuala Lumpur, which we're officially launching this week, where each thematic program focuses on a different aspect of the SDG framework. So SDGs Today is the geospatial arm of SDSN. Before I get into the details of SDGs Today, I wanted to include a slide about the Sustainable Development Goals in case any of the participants are not familiar with the framework. It's a set of 17 global goals that serve as a blueprint for a sustainable future. They were established in 2015, and 191 or 2 member states agreed to achieve these goals by 2030. So we have about 7 to 8 years left to meet our goal. They address, they're very ambitious, and they address a wide range of social, economic, and environmental challenges. They were accompanied by 163 targets and 231 indicators. I haven't included much information about the methodology behind the indicators, the different tiers of indicators that we have, but if anyone's interested in learning more about that, I'm happy to share some links that you can look through. All of that information is available in detail on the UN website. So when we're talking about the SDGs, this is a framework that we're referring to. So SDGs Today was launched in July 2020 in partnership with Esri, which is a geospatial software company, and the National Geographic Society. The aim was our president, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, had this vision and wanted this space where we could look at SDG progress today, hence the name. So, oftentimes official statistics refer to data from 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or even 2 years ago, but that doesn't give us a full picture on how we're doing on the SDGs this year or this week or today. And so the goal was to look at, what's being done around the world that can provide a snapshot of our progress on the goals in a timely manner, but also for looking for geospatial data so that we can track that progress not only over time, but over locations and across different countries and regions as well. So we started off with identifying different research teams or different groups from different sectors that were doing innovative work, producing interesting data, working with non-traditional data sources to measure and monitor a topic related to the SDG framework. So we don't necessarily limit ourselves to the official indicators that I mentioned earlier, but we're looking at how can some of this innovative work complement official statistics and some of the official data that's being used by countries to report on their progress. So we now work with, we feature about 50 plus data sets, and so we work with a wide range of data providers. My colleague Anela will kind of go through that process in a bit more detail, but that's kind of how we started the program. And through that work, we realized that there are 2 other work streams that we need to focus on to create kind of a comprehensive GIS program at SDSN. So the data is great. It provides insight on a very specific topic, but then how do you contextualize that data for a wider audience who may not necessarily have the time to look into the data in much detail or want to understand what kind of impact that data is having in practice. And so we use data-driven storytelling as a way to highlight use cases, to contextualize the data, and provide a story that's easy to understand in terms of, point A, where the data is produced and how that could potentially impact a local community in terms of, let's say, access to basic services or agriculture and other issues. So that's kind of another area of work that we developed since we launched the program. And the third work stream is focused on education and capacity building. So we realized that in order to encourage our users and the SDG community to engage with the data, share the data, and implement it into their workflows, we need to support them in terms of building certain skills to be able to utilize GIS, as kind of develop some basic skills in terms of mapping data and using that for their research and their work as well. So we do have a GIS summer program for youth, middle school and high school students that we offer virtually every summer. We also have engaged in a lot of training and educational activities with university students, academics, and policymakers as well. So we'll talk a little bit about each of these work streams in our presentation. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Anela to talk a little bit more about the data work that we do.
Hi, everyone. So as Maryam and Gerald mentioned, my name is Anela. I am a GIS analyst on this team, and most of my work revolves around the data platform side of our program. So as Maryam mentioned, we seek out innovative data and new data sets and research them and evaluate them against our criteria before we promote them on our platform. I think we have about 8 different criteria that we try to look for when we look at data sets. One of the most important ones being timely, so they have to be updated at least annually. After we find these data sets that we want to visualize and promote on our platform, we'll gather the metadata. The data provider will send us the data set, and we will then clean and reformat that data set. So sometimes the data provider only has the data set in Excel spreadsheets or CSV formats, and we want to transform that into a geospatial format so that we can put them on maps. And that's the packaging data part of the process of adding a data set to our platform. Because this was launched in partnership with Esri, we mostly use ArcGIS Online products to visualize these data sets. We put them on maps and we put them on dashboards to sort of see, look at the data sets in a more nuanced way. I'll show a couple examples of data sets and web apps that we've created so that users that are looking at our platform can see a snapshot of the data set and interact with them before they access the data set themselves and use it themselves if they want to. After we visualize those data sets, we will manage that visualization and make sure that it is updated through things like APIs and Python notebooks that automate these data sets on an annual or daily, however often the data set is updated. So I will change this and share my screen and show a couple examples of data sets that we visualized. So here is one data set. This is the tropics imagery data set from Planet. It is a monthly base map of the tropics throughout the world. So as you can see on the right, this is the imagery for October 2022. And if you swipe, you can see the imagery for September 2022. And you can see that in September, there aren't as much data as in October, and I think that has to do with the processing of the data set and cloud cover and things like that throughout the data set. Another data set that we have is the carbon dioxide emissions. So this is more of a dashboard format. And you can see this interactive map. Any elements that are here, you can expand them and look at them separately from the rest of the dashboard. And if you click any of these regions, for example, a pop-up will show up and will say something about the region, when the data was last updated, and what the time frame of that data set is. Another feature that we like having is this filtering option. So selecting a region, for example, you can select from this drop down, and then the map will zoom in, and the rest of the elements on the dashboard will also filter to whatever selection you have just made. So also on our dataset page, you'll be able to find out more information on that dataset in the About tab, the Metadata tab, and the Access Data tab. So in the About tab on all of our pages, we just have a brief summary of the data set, whether it be how the data set was created, maybe something a little bit how the organization was creating that data set. And then in our metadata tab, we'll provide some more context for that data and some more detailed information on it. And finally, in our access data tab, we will show you where you can actually obtain those data sets themselves. So for example, we have a link to our data hub where you can access all of the layers that are used in this dashboard. I think for this one in particular, there's a feature layer that has the GIS information, and then there's a table that has the daily emissions. And then there's also a section where you can access the original data files. And just as an example, here, you can see that this data provider, if it loads, my internet has been pretty bad recently, but this is an example of a data provider that has their data available only as Excel spreadsheets. But as I mentioned, when we are managing these visualizations and data sets, we try to automate them as much as possible. So I've created a script that downloads these data sets and then updates the feature layer automatically every month. Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to do this Zoom. I think, Maryam, can you share that presentation again? Thanks. Oh, I think that I had linked that photo to that data set. Okay, yeah, great. Thank you. So along with having data sets on our platform from other data providers outside of SDSN and SDGs Today, we have also started to create some in-house data sets. The first of which is My School Today, which is a data set that is based on the school locations on HOT OSM, on the OSM platform gathered via the HOT platform. And it's an update on school locations and walking time for the student population to those school locations throughout the African continent. And you can see that we have a participant quote there where he was able to bike around his area and use the HOT OSM platform to make sure that all the schools in his area were located, so that the data set that we produce that models the walking time has the most updated information on it. Next slide. I think next, Maryam will talk a little bit about the storytelling and the education aspects of our program.
Thanks, Anela. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, one of our work streams is focused on data-driven and GIS-driven storytelling. So we've been trying to utilize the ArcGIS Story Map application. And if you're not familiar with that application, it's a great way to incorporate multimedia content in one space. So think of it as an interactive PDF where you can embed maps, videos, even audio, and it's a great way to kind of make the story a bit more interactive. So we've encouraged some of our partners who are doing really interesting data work. For example, let's say it's a very innovative method that they're using to track one of the SDGs, but it's not necessarily timely. So they don't have plans to update it over the coming years, but we think it's a good resource for policymakers or researchers to have access to. What we do is we try to feature that data in a story map. So we encourage them to share more information about the data, even highlight some use cases, and kind of tell that data story through a story map. So I've included a couple of screenshots from some of the story maps that we feature. What we do is we categorize them by SDG, and so we have an SDG story map collection on our platform, and we can share some links in the chat. So you can kind of go through each SDG collection and look at some of the interesting work that we're doing at SDSN, but also our partners from other sectors and organizations are doing as well. And it's a great way for our partners to use to promote their work as well. So as I mentioned, instead of kind of sending around a 2-pager in a PDF format, we found that a lot of our partners like to use the story map as a way to promote their work. And there's one more kind of utilization of the story map application that we're exploring, and that's to use it for our reports. So over here, you can see I added something related to VNR and VLR templates. Those are voluntary national and local reviews that countries engage in every year. So a number of countries volunteer to share their SDG progress every summer. And so there's a lot of guidelines and handbooks that the UN provides in terms of what that report should look like or could look like, and what countries could consider in terms of incorporating in their reports. So we tried to consolidate that into a story map template to encourage countries to, instead of including static maps in their reports, if they do include them, to include interactive dashboards and maps where readers and the SDG community can actually kind of interact with the data, look at the data sources and be able to access those. So it's a way to promote countries to look at more of a geospatial visualization of their data as well. So we organized a workshop with representatives from about 20+ countries in September, and we got their feedback on the template. And so it's something that we're hoping to make available in the next couple of weeks, actually, and to officially launch this at the HLPF in July. And we've had other reports that we have published in a story map format, which has received a lot of media attention as well. And it was really exciting for us to see that when they were promoted, in an article, the first thing that kind of popped up was the dashboards or a screenshot of the maps. So it was really exciting to see the impact that those maps and dashboards made on the readers as well. And our third kind of core priority work stream is focused on education and capacity building. So I have tried to highlight 2 examples of our educational programs. So in collaboration with the Eco Ambassadors program at the Center for Sustainable Development at the Earth Institute, we co-host these summer GIS programs for the Eco Ambassadors, which are middle school and high school students concerned with climate and SDG related topics. And so what we try to do through this program, and it's all virtual, we offer some workshops and training sessions in GIS. So they learn the basics of how to use kind of ArcGIS online, how to map their data, create these dashboards and story maps. This is combined with lessons on the SDGs and storytelling as well. So then we work with the students over the summer to help develop a research project, and we ask them to present the final project in a story map format. Every year we're blown away by the depth of research and the creativity and the quality of these students' work and the solutions that they propose. And I believe it was last year, one of the student groups submitted their story map to Esri's International Storytelling Competition, and they won the People's Choice Award. So it was very exciting to see their work recognized at that level as well. So that's a program that we offer every summer to these students, and we make all of the recordings of the workshops and sessions available on the platform as well. So it could be a useful resource for some who are just getting started with ArcGIS. Another program that we launched earlier this year was in partnership with Earthrise Education. So they've developed an algorithm that basically uses satellite imagery to detect plastic waste dump sites. And so we launched a challenge focusing on a number of countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, China, and Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken. And we basically reached out to our SDSN networks and student groups in those countries, and we asked them to basically help us validate the data points that were detected. So we gave them some guides, some educational materials. So in terms of, how do you identify or define a dump site when you're looking at, I've included a screenshot of satellite imagery. So, how do you define that? And then for students to be able to add notes to each data point, based on these criteria, we think this has been correctly detected as a plastic waste dump site, or this is why we don't think it is a plastic waste dump site. So we had a number of students participate, and they basically reviewed thousands of data points. And so we had the top 3 winners present their work and their experience going through this program at the International Conference of Sustainable Development this past September, which we host annually. So it was very exciting to see how useful they found this project, and it was the first time that they were kind of exposed to satellite imagery. So it was also interesting for us to hear about that experience. So these are 2 examples of educational activities that we've been involved in. We also work with, earlier this year, we started working with 3 academics within our SDSN network to help them integrate GIS into their ongoing research. So they developed 3 amazing projects with a lot of really cool data visualization, which we will make available on our website very soon. We're just finalizing a few details, but that's another example of capacity building activities that we engage in terms of trying to help those who don't necessarily come from a technical background or kind of see a direct link between GIS and their work, to shed light on what geospatial information and tools can do for their research. So I think now we're going to hear from our friends and partners at CIESIN about a couple of data sets that they recently launched and some storytelling activities that they've engaged in as well. So Linda and James, over to you.
Thank you, Maryam. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Sometimes when I plug in my headphones, they don't work right away. So thank you, Gerald, Maryam, and Anela for having us. We're very excited to be here, and I enjoyed your presentation. I will just share our screen here. Okay. Okay, so James and I are going to talk a bit today about how we use global open data to compute 4 SDG indicators. James and I are both GIS specialists in the Geospatial Applications Division at CIESIN. For those of you who aren't familiar with CIESIN, it was established in 1989 as an independent NGO, but we joined the Earth Institute in 1998 and moved from Michigan to the Lamont campus up in Palisades, New York. So for reference, Columbia down at the bottom, we're up here in Palisades, and there is a regular shuttle service in between the 2 campuses. But that's where we are. I have a background in Earth and Environmental Sciences. I have a background in Earth and Environmental Sciences and a master's in Geography and GIS. I also teach an Intro to GIS course in the undergraduate program in Sustainable Development. And I think I saw one of my former students in the participant list. So hello, Sarah. So at CIESIN, we work at the intersection of, close this, at the intersection of the social, natural, and information sciences, specializing in online and information data management, and as well as spatial data integration to produce new data sets or to make data sets more compatible with satellite imagery from NASA. We also have conducted trainings in GIS and GIS methods working with spatial data. And we also conduct interdisciplinary research related to human interactions in the environment. So as I said, we produce various data sets, and we'll show you some of the data sets in the presentation today. And we produce these data sets for use by researchers and analysts in a variety of disciplines, ranging from the physical to the social sciences. Some of our most well-known data sets, or one of our most well-known data sets, is the gridded population of the world. We also produce a variety of environmental, social, and economic indicator data sets. And these are distributed through the NASA Socioeconomic Data and Application Center, which we also manage at CIESIN. Some of the project work we do.
Hey, Linda, it's still the same, the title slide.
It's not changing?
No.
Okay, it's changing on my screen.
Oh, no.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me try to share that again. Okay, so you're seeing the title slide, and are you still seeing the title slide?
Yep, still the title slide.
On my browser now. Is that
Yep,
correct?
now it's good.
Oh. Okay. Are you still seeing the title slide?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got kicked out of Zoom and then logged back in. Are you still seeing the title slide?
You're not sharing screen right now.
Not sharing screen, right? Thank you. Okay. Title slide?
This is the second slide.
All right. Very good. Okay, so I was describing CIESIN, what CIESIN is. I think I'll in the interest of time, I'll move a little more quickly through it, what I just said. But we work at the intersection of the natural, social, and information sciences. We produce data sets for use by researchers across disciplines. Many of those data sets are distributed through the NASA Socioeconomic Data and Application Center, which we manage. We also have a variety of projects related to climate vulnerability and natural hazard exposure. So let me just move forward. Okay, so the data that we'll talk about today was funded by NASA through the Human Planet Initiative, and we produced 4 SDG indicators using global open data. And so using global open data for these data sets means that we could use common data inputs for all the countries, and this facilitates cross-country comparisons. It also helps to address the fact that there are gaps and disparities in data quality, data availability, and GIS capacity between countries. James developed automated scripts so that these SDG indicators could be produced very quickly and also easily reproduced or updated when new input data becomes available. And so this ability to have regular updates will help countries to be able to more readily track their progress towards the goals over time. So we're hoping to be able to update these annually. That's somewhat dependent on when the input data sets become available. Okay, so I will hand over to James. And James, just let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I'm James Gibson. I'm a research staff assistant at CIESIN. I'm also doing my master's part-time in the EEE department, Earth and Environmental Engineering. And one of the things I really work on at CIESIN a lot on is these SDG indicators. So as Maryam mentioned, there's 17 SDGs, and in order to kind of track progress towards all these different SDGs, the UN has adopted these indicators, which kind of are usually formulas or equations for quantifying progress towards a given indicator. So SDG indicator 7.1.1 is the portion of population with access to electricity, so measuring access to electricity around the world. SDG 7 is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. However, in 2019, still 759 million people around the world lacked access to electricity, according to the UN's Energy Progress Report. The indicator helps target areas that don't necessarily have great access or are lacking in access, so that countries can help prioritize where they need to launch infrastructure initiatives to try and establish access. So just to go over the methodology that I use a little bit is first you obtain nighttime lights data. So this is obtained from the VIIRS instrument on one of NASA's satellites. And then that's turned into a binary raster. So just reclassifying it so that there's each pixel is either a pixel where there is actual electricity, where there is light, and there's pixels where there's no electricity, there's no light. Then we use gridded population data. So this is modeled population data for a given country. And together with this binary raster and the modeled population data, we can combine them to get the access to electricity for a subnational unit in the entire country. Next slide. Another indicator I worked on is SDG indicator 9.1.1, which is also known as the Rural Access Index. So this indicator looks at access in rural communities to all-season roads, and it measures access as being within 2 kilometers to an all-season road. An all-season road is simply a road that is motorable, drivable all year round. Overall, SDG 9 it aims at building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive, sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation. So indicator 9.1.1 is really important to achieving this goal. The UN in their Sustainable Transport, Sustainable Development Interagency Report states that sustainable transportation is really important for reducing poverty, creating jobs, facilitating access to those jobs, and promoting overall better livelihoods. So what you'll see for a lot of these methodologies is they kind of follow the same outline. So in this one, we're grabbing some urban rural data, which is provided by the Joint Research Committee of the European Commission. They have a data set called GIS Mod, which is is modeled urban and rural grid cells. So we can join those to create urban and rural zones, which we're then going to intersect with zones of access around the roads that are all season in rural communities. These zones are 2 kilometers all the way around. And then again, we're going to be adding in that modeled population data so that we can calculate the indicator in the end, which is rural access to all season roads per subnational unit. And then next one. And now we're going to shift gears to SDG 11. So there's 2 indicators that I worked on for SDG 11, which is focused on cities. SDG indicator 11.2.1 is measuring the proportion of population that has convenient access to public transport by sex, age, and persons with disabilities. So only about half the world's urban population has convenient access to public transport. Again, that's according to the UN Sustainable Transport Sustainable Development Interagency Report. The indicator defines convenient access as being in walking distance of 0.5 kilometers to a low capacity public transport point, or 1 kilometer to a high capacity public transport point. So whereas a bus station might be an example of a low capacity public transport point, a railway station would be an example of a high capacity public transport point. It can take on a lot more people, and they're generally moving a bit faster. So again, we're going to start with some urban data, and we're going to use that to extract OSM public transport data. So I think Maryam touched on this a little bit, and Anela, that OSM is OpenStreetMap. It's a source of crowdsourced data. So that means people all around the world are just digitizing different features of Earth, such as public transport points. And it's a really valuable tool for calculating these indicators. Once we have the public transport points, we can either buffer them by 0.5 kilometers, so creating a zone around them that's 0.5 kilometers if it's a low capacity public transport point, or creating a zone around them that's 1 kilometer for a high capacity public transport point. Then again, we're going to add in that modeled population data, and we're able to calculate how many people in these zones have convenient access to public transport for a given urban center. Okay, and then the next one. So the other indicator that I calculated is SDG indicator 11.7.1. Again, this is focused on cities, but now we're looking at public space. Public space can really be important for improving public health, bolstering community, and encouraging economic exchange. So there's a lot of other benefits aside from just environmental benefits that public space, like parks or just like any space that's accessible by the public, can have for a given community. So the indicator divides public space into roads and then open public space. So open public space is where you're going to get those parks, playgrounds, and other areas like that. So again, we're going to be starting with some urban data provided by the Joint Research Committee. And then we're going to be extracting more OSM data, this time taking from different data sets. So leisure, land use, natural, and then the highway data set for the roads, adding in that world population, that gridded population data. And then once again, we were able to get the final indicator, which is the prevalence of public space and access to open public space per urban center. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Linda to kind of just like wrap up our experience, or actually we're gonna do the dashboards first.
Yeah. Do you want to share your?
Oh no, you can do it. It's fine.
Do you want to share your screen for the dashboards, or you want me to click through them? And
yeah, you can just click through them.
Okay. So for these data sets, let me just hide these. For these 4 data sets that we worked on, we then collaborated with SDSN and to make them available on SDGs Today. And so Anela explained a bit about that process of how SDSN collaborates with data providers. Our data sets, we had 4 of them. They're a bit different than some of the other ones in that we are trying to provide them or 2 of them at least at subnational level. So that would be SDG 7.1 and 9.1. These maps take a little while to load, but there's a high level of detail in here at the subnational level too for these countries. And so similar to the dashboards that Anela showed you, if this wants to, doesn't seem to want to work. Let me try to reload that one. So for SDG 7.1.1 and 9.1.1, the access to electricity and rural access to roads, we're reporting the indicator at the subnational level and as well at the national level. So we actually have two maps in here. In the About section, the tabs don't seem to be working right now. But
I think if you scroll up a little bit, sometimes, yeah, and yeah.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Anela. So, you know, we have a little bit of information about the indicator and why it's important. We have our metadata about our data set and the how it was developed. Obviously some attribution information, terms of use, which is open, and some access to the data. This is very similar to what Anela showed you, but just to show you here, you know, we are reporting the indicator here globally, and then you can select, oops, you can select a country. Say Argentina, and zoom to a country. It may take a little while. It takes a little while to update these tiles, as I said, because they're quite high resolution. And then each one of these is a subnational unit. If you click on them, you can get the indicator reported for that subnational unit. So in this particular administrative area in Argentina, the population with access to electricity is approximately 33% of the population. Similarly, the rural access index is also, dashboard is quite similar. It's reported at the subnational level as well as at the national level. And then just to give you an example of what the other two dashboards look like. So these indicators for goal 11, these indicators are reported at the urban extent level. So rather than subnational units, these are being displayed as various sized circles that represent the percent of the population with convenient access to public transport. The further you zoom in, you eventually see the urban extent that was used for reporting these units. And if you click the pop-up, we can get some information about what percent of the population in that urban extent has convenient access to public transit. And the urban public space is reporting the indicator in two ways, actually. One is the average share of the urban center that is open space for public use, and the proportion of the urban center population that has access to open public space. As James mentioned, there's two different kinds of public space to consider in this indicator. And again, we can zoom to a country. Go. Czech Republic and see. We can also, if we know which urban center we're interested in, we can certainly pick that urban center as well. We get the extent of the urban center in the dark gray. I hope that this is updating quickly enough across the internet. And then if you click the circle, you can get the indicators reported for that particular unit. And so, you know, we developed these dashboards in collaboration with, well, we didn't develop them. I shouldn't say that. SDSN, Anela developed the dashboards after we provided the data and the metadata. And then we had, you know, plenty of opportunity to review and provide feedback. It was really a great partnership. They have a strong commitment to, you know, featuring data sets that will be useful to users working on current issues in sustainable development. And so, you know, we worked with them to make sure that our data and the metadata that we provided met the standards of quality and timeliness that were required for inclusion in the data hub. again, we were able to provide feedback, and Anela was really quick to address, our suggestions to fix bugs, and to implement the suggestions that we made in order to optimize the user experience. So we're really happy and grateful to have this forum to share our work. Let me just share this last slide here. So, we have, like I said, these 4 data sets on the Data Hub, and we do also have 2 story maps, but I think in the interest of time, I'll probably not show them. Right. How are we doing on time, Anela?
Yeah, we can send out all of these links to the Zoom participants.
Sure.
As well. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So these data sets will eventually be available as well on the NASA Socioeconomic Data and Application Center, and we are hoping to update them annually. So back over to you.
Great, thank you. So we do have a few minutes left. So if anybody had any questions, please feel free to use the raise hand feature or enter your question into the chat.
Yeah, I think before we do a little Q&A session, we just wanted to show some opportunities for collaboration. First of all, thank you again, James and Linda. We're really excited to have these data sets on our platform. And it was really interesting to see how, the process of making those data sets. I know I've been working with the data layers for a while, but one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that after we visualize these data sets, we will launch and promote them on our social media. So tomorrow for GIS Day, that is actually when we'll be promoting those data sets on our platform on our social media. So watch out for that. For the students that are here, here are some opportunities for ways to work with us. First, if you're working with data sets or you know of any data sets that might meet our criteria that we should highlight and add to our platform, please let us know. Also, if you're working on a data project that addresses a data cap or uses innovative technologies and methodologies, feel free to reach out to us and we can work with you to add that data set to our platform as well. And if you have other ideas for how we can support your work on the SDGs and promote your data projects and research, also let us know. So with that, thank you so much, Gerald, for organizing, of course, and Maryam and James and Linda for being here. And if there are any questions, let us know.
Right. Well, it seems like there are no questions at the moment, but I'll be following up with all the participants with the accompanying information here, as well as the contact information if you want to get in touch. So thank you all for your attention, for being here today. And I want to thank again our guests, Maryam, Anela, Linda, and James, for sharing your work. It was really fascinating. So thank you. All right. Everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.